Double P podcast. Double P.
What I like to call
Double P.
What I like to call
Double P podcast.
Welcome to Irish Craic, a review of the television program Dublin Murders, by me, an American. My name's Bubba, and I have read the first novel in Tana French's Dublin Murder Squad book series. I've also read the fourth book in the series, Broken Harbor. This television show is just based off the first two books, In the Woods from 2007 and The Likeness from 2008. We won't be going into any spoilers about the series that could come true in the television version, but just know that I'm a partial book reader expert. We're going to break down this second episode entirely. And later, I'll be joined by my special guest, Peter from Australia, aka @Baga2007, as he gives his unique insight into this unique television series. But first, I want to get to feedback. Why? We do this podcast for one reason and one reason only. We do it because we want to connect with you, the people we like to call double L's, loyal listeners, who download and get excited about stuff. We're part of Double P Media, and we need you, we want you to reach out to us at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. When you give us feedback, that lets us know that someone's actually listening to this, and we love it. I got two great feedbacks right at the top from YouTube. The first is from Cornelia Amiri, who writes, "So intriguing Dublin Murders is, with strong realistic characters. I love the twist in the first episode. It looks like this series is going to be really good." Well, that's what we're hoping, Cornelia. Follow us, join us as we journey into these dark, dark woods. Also on YouTube, Moonsheep wrote, "A new podcast that's just grand. Top of the morning to you all." Okay, now I'm out of words I learned from living 1 year in Ireland. Great that you have another podcast. We'll watch it just for that reason and hoping Joffrey shows up. Oh, thank you so much, Moonsheep. Joffrey is, of course, referring to the character on Game of Thrones, King Joffrey, who we did a podcast about called the Joffrey Podcast. You can find out all that information on any of our social media platforms or on our website, doublepmedia.com. The final bit of feedback I'm going to get to right here at the top came from Twitter, from our good friends, Podcast Pals. That's at Podcast PALS, Pals, at Podcast Pals, who's been a great listener, great person. If you like podcasts, and I'm hoping that you're listening to this because you like podcasts, follow Podcast Pals on Twitter. Great follow. They wrote, "I bought The Likeness on Kindle just after finishing In the Woods. If I'd read the first chapter like you, Bubba, in a shop, I wouldn't have bothered. But glad I did. It's just as good as In the Woods. Strongly recommend you read it before you hit episode 4 or 5. You've got time. Also, since we both grew up on Agatha Christie and have the same needs from a detective story, I'm sure you'll love the book Magpie Murders by Anthony Horowitz. It's perfect." What I love about this, and I wrote back immediately, is, you know what, I've already read it. It is a great book. Anthony Horowitz writes some great TV shows, but in this book, Magpie Murders, he is aping Agatha Christie style better than anybody's ever aped it. In some ways, better than the dame Agatha Christie did it herself in some of her novels, too. Really great book. You should read it. You should check it out. But I do want to get to a point that probably is playing up here on the podcast. I have a feeling some of you may have already finished this series. We're doing these podcasts right as they come out here in the United States, but I believe it's already finished over in the UK, in the United Kingdom, and possibly if it's already done in Ireland, that I've seen some people online who didn't like various aspects of the ending of this first series, this first season. And what I think about when I hear that is that some things can work in a book, and I wonder if they would work in a TV show. I don't want to go too spoilery, but in the book, this really is from Adam, aka Detective Rob Reilly's perspective. We don't know if we can always trust it. He tells us we can't always trust it. He says he lies, but we're always in that. So our knowledge is really limited to his knowledge, or specifically what he's willing to share. I believe that works wonderfully in that first book. I've mentioned I love it so many times. But I wonder if being so tied to that knowledge and that perspective at the end of the series did leave a lot of people wanting more. That's all I'll say. If you're one of those people across the pond who've already finished the series, no spoilers, but we'd love your feedback. I keep saying it, at Double PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/Double PHQ. All right, now we all watched the episode. I hope you watched the episode because we're about to spoil episode 2 of the first series here, Dublin Murders. And I thought I'd try to do something different this week, where let's be detective. Let's look at all of our suspects, and that could possibly be every character who said a line in this episode, including a few that didn't appear in this episode, and we'll just break down where they are, and we'll look at all the facts, just the facts. First, before we get to our suspects, let's look at our victim, Katy. What did we learn new about her this week? Well, she had a phone given to her by her ballet instructor. She put the security password in as her twin sister's name, Jess, JE55. Also, we saw from a neighbor's home security camera, Katy had gone out, put something in the trash. It didn't look like she was running away, the cops point out. And if she was leaving, it was kind of like a purposeful leave, let's go find something. So Katy, like any murder victim, probably had no idea what was going to happen. Now, because so many murders have an emotional element, a lot of times it is smart as a detective to go ahead and look at the family. And let's start at possibly suspect number one right at the top, Katy's father, Jonathan Devlin. The first thing we learn in the episode is he fears he can't afford a coffin. He's lost his job. He's going broke. He's going broke, but his daughter somehow was going to be able to go to ballet school in London? Maybe she was going on a scholarship because she was so good. Maybe that's how Katy was going to do it. We will have to see. There was a great Twin Peaks moment right in the morgue there where they're trying to automatically part the curtains so he can identify his daughter's dead body. But it's like, it's not working. Whoops, sorry. Just like Twin Peaks' infamous transformer. Love that little moment. Now, Jonathan has been rallying against this motorway coming through his neighborhood, coming through these very woods. He's been complaining about it. He believes that it's kind of a land grab and not really about, we're going to bring jobs to the community. We're going to bring infrastructure. He believes somebody behind this is really just trying to do a land grab and gather up all the land in his neighborhood, in his area. Because he's been rallying against it, he claims, and I'm going to constantly try to point out when something is hearsay or when we're having to take somebody's word for it. But Jonathan claims that he's been getting threats and that nobody had any reason to harm Katy, but people did have a reason to harm him because he's been fighting this development so much. In fact, he said, listen, I've been getting calls, phone calls which say, watch your back, we'll break your legs. Phone calls which seemingly have the same voice every time, according to him. Katy, his daughter who's been killed, apparently picked up the phone one of those times. When he saw Katy, he says that he believed that she was just talking to her friend, and it wasn't until later that he realized it was from this threatening voice. He claims that the voice said, it'd be a shame if anything happened to her. Now that is pointing the finger away from yourself if you're a guilty person. Now he could be telling the truth, and that could set up who that voice could be. We'll talk about that later. But it's certainly something we want to file away in our thoughts as we try to figure out who done it. Now, of course, that's just him telling the cops things. We also learned some stuff which he hasn't brought up to the cops about his history. Jonathan Devlin was one of those bullies back in the 80s. When Peter and Jamie disappeared and Adam somehow escaped whatever happened to them in those woods, Jonathan was one of the bullies who was trying to be like, hey, what happened to Peter? What happened to Jamie? Wasn't a nice guy. Now this is hearsay. If we can trust Adam's recollection and other people's recollections, Jonathan's girlfriend back when he was in high school was pregnant. And she was, sure enough, a woman who becomes a cleaning woman named Sandra Scully. Jonathan, in probably the thing that makes him seem the most guilty, he went to see Porky's Revenge. That was a bad movie theater showing Police Academy 2 and Porky's Revenge. Ugh. Jonathan says he was there with his buddies, and so they have an alibi, and there's no way they could be involved in those terrible, terrible killings. But it is a bit suspicious that his alibi came from a girl much younger than him, who he later married, possibly, if we believe the old woman, the old biddy I like to call her, that he got her pregnant. Very intriguing. We're definitely going to have to watch all of this. The final thing is that Jonathan, he gets angry. Turn that volume down. So it proves that he is a parent. But also, he has a bit of anger in him. That's what we know about Jonathan. Suspect 1. Now, suspect 2, speaking of anger, may be Jonathan's wife. In the first episode, we thought she was catonic. There are these rumors that we find out that she's possibly got a pill issue that people keep talking about. Cassie suggested that, Detective Cassie. This old woman suggested that Margaret has an issue with her nerves and with pills. She was catatonic in the first episode. But you mess with her volume, she's going to snap you to death. She could be a violent woman. She was smashing glass photos. Once again, following this hearsay, did she get married just because she was pregnant and didn't have a choice? Couldn't go across the channel and go get some work done? Is that what it could be? Why did she seemingly leave her parenting up to her oldest daughter rather than her do it herself? Very intriguing, very interesting from a character we haven't seen much of. We haven't seen much of any of these suspects, but Margaret, the mom, let's file that away. Next up in the looking at the family, you got to think of teenage Rosalind, who, according to the cops, doesn't own a phone. Teenager who doesn't own a phone, suspicious. Continuing with suspect number 3, she sneaks out of the house, and she doesn't want to talk to Cassie Maddox, whom she says, well, I don't want to talk to her. She kind of looks at my clothes. Remember last week, Cassie pointed out that Rosalind apparently wasn't wearing a bra. I don't want to seem like a creepy old dude, but I tried to tell this week if she was wearing a bra or not. I'm going to stop trying to tell. I don't think that has anything to do with anything, but there it is. She snuck out of the house, though, in this episode, to go talk to Detective Rob Reilly, a.k.a. Adam Rob Reilly. She is just having trouble, like anybody would if your younger sister got murdered. She wants to know if her sister was sexually abused. She's trying to find something out there. Obviously, emotionally devastated by this death of her sister. The final thing is the old woman, the old gossip, says that Rosalind has had no life of her own raising these kids because her mother, Margaret, has got the nerves and the pills and the catatonic state. So that's suspect 3. Suspect 4 of the family might be the most intriguing just because we see so little of her, but we hear so much about her. Katy's twin sister, Jessica, a.k.a. the password on her phone, Jess, JE55. The old gossip is really cold towards this sister. She says Jess was a fetch, a twin who is cursed and who didn't come from God. Oh my Lord, holy smokes, what's going on here? Jessica, of all the family members, seems the least affected. People constantly refer to her as mentally challenged, which she may be, maybe she isn't. But she does seem to be an identical twin to her sister. They're, stepping away from the case. They're both played by the same actress. So you would think there's got to be more to that story there. So there's our 4 suspects in the family. Let's keep going because this mystery gets knottier and knottier like those trees in the woods. Jonathan, as I mentioned, was a bully. And we now understand that 2 other bullies back in the 80s who were mean to Adam, wanting to know what happened to Peter and Cassie, are in fact somebody named Cathal, or Cal. I'm just going to spell it, C-A-T-H-L, Cathal Mills. In episode 1, he was the rich business guy who the homeless man attacked last week. He works for who? Malin Davis. Who's Malin Davis? Well, that's the company that is doing this roadway, this motor pass through the woods. Last week, he kind of told that homeless guy, enough. This week, pretty sure we only see him in one scene. He's about to hop a flight, get away from the scene, possibly, if he's a suspect. And he calls the office, and he's like, listen, there's this homeless guy hanging around. Get rid of him. It seems to be, and maybe this is my own lack of not understanding, but he's kind of saying, have the company get rid of him. Don't call the cops. Is that a hint that he doesn't want the cops to talk to this homeless man? The homeless man, we're going to have to assume, is sure enough Shane, the 3rd bully from back in the 80s. He keeps painting He Rises on these billboards talking about the expressway, the motorway coming. One unique twist, which we're really going to have to talk about at the end, homeless man, probably Shane, is walking down the middle of the street. You think, oh my God, this guy's going to get run over. Oh dear Lord. But he isn't. But the person driving the car has Lexie on their keychain. And you suddenly think to yourself, Lexie, where have I heard that? Well, we'll get to that. later on as we continue down the suspects. So that's 6 suspects. Boy, say that 5 times fast. 6 suspects, 6 suspects, 6 suspects. Okay, I can do it 3 times and that's about it. Which of these seem the most guilty? Well, certainly because the most is pointing at the dad, I would put him as suspect number 1 right now. But sometimes, especially if you've read a lot of Agatha Christie like I have, sometimes you don't like getting pointed in one way because they're trying to misdirect you. Or sometimes, and Agatha Christie did this herself many times, it's the double bluff. They point a lot at somebody, so then you look at them, but then they fade into the background, and then at the end you reveal, oh yeah, what about him? So we've got the 4 family members and the 2 other bullies from the 80s. Before we get to that bully girlfriend, Jonathan's girlfriend, Sandra Scully, I want to talk about the ballet teacher, because this, once again, if I'm a murder mystery reader and I'm looking at this, my ears are pricking up. Miss Simone Cameron. She has shut down her ballet school. That makes perfectly sense. If it's a small community ballet school and one of your star pupils gets murdered, yeah, let's take a break. Now, Sandra Scully, and once again, this is hearsay, but they showed it as like a flashback or a remembrance. Sandra, the cleaning woman who was Jonathan's girlfriend back in the 80s, she has a memory or a flashback to this teacher helping Katy at ballet. And the teacher says a very interesting line. The pain is what makes it beautiful as she's forcing Katy to stretch and do this ballet move. Very, very interesting. The final thing that as a detective my ears prick up about, the phone, the infamous cell phone with the JE55 password. Her dad, Jonathan, didn't give her that cell phone. It was her ballet teacher. Simone Cameron got Katy the cell phone so they could talk when Katy went to London. Now, not too much about myself. I've been in education a bit. I certainly stay in contact with former students at time to time. But buying them a cell phone so that we could text and we could have late night calls? Is this ballet teacher a bit too close to her pupils? We'll find out. Suspect number 7 right then. Number 8 is this cleaning lady, Jonathan's high school girlfriend, Sandra Scully. Sandra, I don't know if she was in episode 1. I certainly didn't remember her, but she's walking into the ballet school. And as she walks in, Katy's locker is there. And all the lockers look pretty clean except Katy's. It almost looks dirty and black on the outside. Right there at the wall, there's a flyer up talking about, hey, our girl Katy got accepted to ballet school in London. Look at how awesome that is. Sandra was apparently part of this group back in the 80s, these 3 bullies, and she was Jonathan's girlfriend. She also seemingly had a very tight connection with Jamie, the girl. She would put makeup on Jamie, the girl, saying, oh, look at how pretty Jamie is. Is that typical things high school girls do? As someone who's never been a high school girl, I can't say for sure. But to go to a younger kid and put makeup on him? We'll have to think about that a bit. When Sandra is questioned by the cops, she lies and said she doesn't know Jonathan at all, or Jonathan's wife, Margaret. But as Detective Cassie Maddox finds out, that can't be true. She's lying to the cops. Why would you lie about the cops? Finally, based on the old gossip hound, the woman in the neighborhood, Sandra got pregnant from Jonathan and then had an abortion. As anybody might imagine, an abortion in the very Catholic country of Ireland back in the 80s, that would have been a huge scandal. You would have to go somewhere else, you imagine. Is that true? Does this tie in any way to how she felt about Katy, how she feels about Jonathan? We don't even know. We haven't seen that together yet. But it would be interesting to see how she feels about Jonathan, how she feels about Margaret, the woman who ended up marrying her high school sweetheart. A suspect who really came in strong. Number 8, Sandra Scully. Suspect number 9 is the archaeology student, Damian Donnelly. Damian and another archaeology student, a female student, discovered Katy at the dig, at the site. One thing, if you've read a lot of Agatha Christie, always be very conscious of someone who finds the body. Also, the last person to see the victim alive is another Agatha Christie trick. I hope I haven't spoiled any of her books for you guys. So, archaeology student Damian Donnelly, he's talking about a mysterious man, a man in a light blue tracksuit who was seen around the woods, looking at the digs. The detectives, Rob and Cassie, they don't believe this person exists. They think Damien is just talking because he wants to do something. He's a talker. He wants to be involved. And so he came up with this shadowy figure. According to Damien, Jonathan Devlin brought all three of his daughters out into the woods, into the site one time. Damien mentions that Jessica, the one he mentions has learning disabilities, she got sick. Then the other two daughters brought her home. But Jonathan didn't. He stayed out there. Okay. Damien, one thing as a mystery lover you always have to think about is, well, where was this person's alibi? Could they have killed anybody that night? Well, Damien says he was home watching his mother who has MS. The detectives come back and, yeah, the mother does exist. She does have this issue. But could somebody go to sleep and you feel confident leaving them for a bit to go out and commit a murder? We shall have to see. Damien certainly doesn't come across as a murderer, but maybe that's them trying to trick us. When I was reading this book, let's get to my prime suspect, certainly at this point. Rob Reilly, a.k.a. Adam Rob Reilly, a.k.a. our main character, our main detective with Cassie Maddox. He should not be doing this case. Let's all come to the agreement. He shouldn't be the detective on this case. But he keeps saying he has to be. Now, I suppose his reasoning makes sense. If they found out that I kind of hid this when I applied to be a police officer, when I applied to be a detective, that would ruin my career. He is right that anybody covering this case would be looking for him, just as a background, just to confirm how things are. Hey, whatever happened to that kid who survived when the two others disappeared in the 80s? So all of it makes sense. But the fact that he's still thinking about it, still kind of scarred by it from what we can tell. He says he's got 10 hours of his life missing. So he went into those woods and he lost 10 hours, as well as his two friends disappeared forever? Very, very suspicious. Red flags. Danger, danger, Will Robinson. We understand as a kid he was tormented by these bullies, and that's one of the reasons. He was tormented by everybody, tormented by losing his friends, Peter and Jamie. So he left Ireland, went over to England, and became English. And they teased him there. He was still traumatized by it. Even at school, he's dreaming of these bullies beating him up. And he's also doing what I only describe as to kill a mockingbird move. He's writing little notes, asking Peter and Jamie to come back, and he's leaving them in a knot in a tree. But this tree is in England, isn't it? How is he hoping to find this? Rob is the one looking at the old case. He's reading through these old files. He's looking at the testimony of Jonathan Devlin, of Cathal Cal, and Shane. He's looking at all the evidence. Is it possible he could be hiding and destroying some of it from that old case as well? You'd have to think about. Did he have a crush on Jamie? Is that important? It certainly seemed to me like he did. Like Peter may have been a boy and liked Jamie and been, I don't care. You look silly with makeup. But Adam didn't want to answer that question. Did Rob have a crush on Jamie? Is that tied to this anyway? Another reason to be suspicious. Probably the worst thing he's ever done in his life? He's a litter bug. You're just going to throw your cup out the window? Not cool, Adam Rob. Maybe he'd say, Adam did that. Not Rob, I'm cool. Now he has. When Quigley, the detective everybody likes to tease, is sent down to the evidence area to read all these transcripts from people like Jonathan they gave back in the 80s, Rob keeps going down to check on them. Hey, what's going on? Is it he's trying to make sure they don't cop to him being Adam? Suspicious, possibly, based on the story we're being told, makes perfect sense, but also you have to wonder. Agatha Christie has a couple of great novels where theoretically our point of view can't be trusted. It's the classic unreliable narrator. Is that what Rob is? We have to watch him very closely. Maybe not so closely as when he's going to do a booty call with the refrigerator Nazi who is his landlord / friend with benefits. A final thing that he keeps saying that I think you have to question everything that Rob says is when he pushes Cassie. We've got to do this case. We've got to do this case. He's telling Cassie, listen, we have to do this because it's connected to what happened to me back in the 80s. Why is he so convinced? Does he know something he hasn't told us yet? We have to look at Rob. Even though I think he's very likable, he's certainly very good at his job. Like him a lot. A new character entered the suspect list this week, and I love it. I hope you are digging in as deep as you can. Cassie. Cassie keeps saying they can't do the case, can't do the case. Is she trying to get away from the case because she has some connection to it? We haven't heard of any connection yet, but we've suddenly found out a fascinating new side to Cassie. Cassie used to be undercover, and when she was undercover, she was so deep undercover, she wasn't Cassie. She was a character called Lexie Mangan, I hope it is, Alexandra, or Lexie. And so she was so undercover that she had a completely false identity. And now we find out that someone is saying, hey, I need my birth certificate. I'm Lexie. I need my birth certificate. But Lexie doesn't exist. What is going on here? How is Cassie... Cassie is warned by Frankie, the person who's been stalking her. I like to call that guy Creepy Young Stannis because of his receding hairline. But Creepy Young Stannis has been checking up on Cassie because somebody, we don't know who, but somebody, possibly Cassie herself, is trying to, quote-unquote, reactivate the old identity of Lexie, get a birth certificate, then you could possibly get a passport, get all sorts of other documents for this non-existent person. What is going on with Detective Cassie Maddox, somebody who feels the need to put booby traps, to do some arts and crafts, and put booby traps outside her door to find out if anybody's entered her apartment? And of course, guess what? She was right. Someone had been, her old boss, Frankie. Or, as I like to call him, Creepy Young Stannis. Creepy Young Stannis seemingly would, if he's an undercover detective, he would seemingly have absolutely nothing to do with these cases, and certainly the case of Katy. Another person who probably has nothing to do with it is Detective Kelly, a.k.a. Chief Varies, is what I like to say. And I gotta tip my cap to him when he has such great lines. When he says to Cassie's boyfriend, O'Neill, he's like, listen, you dick around, I'll shred your testicles. This is an adult show. You have to have a gruff, sexist cop, a.k.a. Chief Varies O'Kelly. And somebody who you wouldn't think could be a suspect through 2 episodes, we shall see, is Cassie's boyfriend O'Neill, who desperately, seemingly, wants to be part of this murder squad. And he's the one who cracked the passcode on Katy's phone of being Jess E55. Okay, listeners, who do you think it is? If you've read the book, if you've finished the series, don't say it. But we want to know. Contact me and tell me who 2 episodes into this you think is the guilty party. At PHQ. That's the word double, the single letter P, the letters HQ for headquarters, at PHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/PHQ. Let's go to my interview with great detective himself, Peter, down in Australia. Then we'll come back for some more Irish crack.
What I like to call Double P Podcast.
Now I have the pleasure to be joined by a true Double L loyal listener, as well as a Double P.
Double P?
That's perfect podcast host himself. It's Bagger. How you doing?
Not too bad, Bubba. Bubba and Bagger.
Exactly. The Double B's coming at you to talk Dublin Murder this week. We just finished episode 222. And so, Peter, let everybody know where you stand. Have you read these books by Tana French this is based on? How are you coming to this as a viewer?
I actually got the first book and read about 10 pages, and I was hooked. I was hooked when Rob, or Adam, I suppose he was Rob at the start, he was talking briefly about himself, and then he said, apart from being a policeman and all that, he says, I lie too. And I thought, oh, this sounds like my sort of book. But then I thought, no, I'll hold off and watch the TV show so I won't be spoilt with the story. But I'm dying for the show to finish so I can get back to the book.
Oh, man, that is a great, great story. Well, before we go any further, you know what? I've mentioned you are a perfect podcast host. Peter, tell everybody about the podcast that you do and how they can find it on their podcast platform.
Oh, we do. I do an Amazing Race podcast. It's Australian Amazing Race. It's about halfway through, I'd say, and it's on iTunes and everything. It's Neil, Alan and Peter's Amazing Race Australia podcast. And if you just search for that everywhere, you should be able to find it.
That's pretty good. Now, does the show make you want to be on The Amazing Race?
No. It's not, to be honest, it's not my favourite show. I've always been a big Survivor fan.
Oh, yeah.
We did a podcast on Australian Survivor, which finished a couple months ago, and the guy I was doing it with, Neil, he hadn't watched Survivor before, so it was his baptism of fire, so to speak. And we did a thing where we had to pick who we thought would win right at the start, and he picked a guy who ended up coming fourth, so that was a pretty good effort considering he had no idea about how the show works. And let's just say I had 5 different picks because mine kept going out. I'd pick someone and they'd go out that week. So after that, he wanted to do an Amazing Race, and I thought, well, since I got him to do the Survivor, I'll do the Amazing Race with him. And then we started, and a girl on a Facebook site from Amazing Race Australia fans and races or something asked if she could join as well. So there's 3 of us doing it.
What a great story.
Yeah, I'm sort of the one that just sort of goes, what are they doing next? I don't get it.
Well, let me say here stateside, some of the Survivor fans have said that most recent season of Australian Survivor was supposed to be a great season. That's what everybody said. So hopefully we'll get to check it out online.
It is very good, actually. They other channels had it originally. Going right back to when Survivor first started, Channel 9 here got the rights to it, and under their agreement with
Mark Burnett?
Under the agreement, Australia had to produce their own version. About the time of the 4th series of American Survivor, and they did an Australian Survivor, and it was diabolically bad.
Oh no!
The first challenge, just to set up how bad the show was, the first challenge, they're on top of a cliff with ocean, beside them.
Okay.
And they've got to fire arrows that are on fire to a target, which is about, 20 metres away, and set that target on fire. Except there's a strong wind blowing straight across.
So none of the flames could make it?
No, so every arrow would get about halfway and go out. And they did it. They started the challenge, and then after arrow wasn't doing any good, after a while there's a shot of all the competitors all huddled together because it was freezing cold, and the host came up and said, I think we'll just leave this one here and try something else tomorrow. And that summed up the whole series. It was just that bad. Oh man, that's heartbreaking. And the worst thing was, we were all big American Survivor fans, obviously, because it was still new and it was still rating well here. It still rates reasonably well, but back then it was one of the top rating shows. And Channel 9, in their wisdom, didn't show American season 4, but showed the Australian one instead, and never repeated or put it on a different time slot for the American one, which upset a lot of people. Oh, man. And it was actually, I don't download because that's illegal, but if I had have been downloading, that would have been the first thing that I would have ever downloaded, that series. Man, these are great stories. I want to say, here in the States, I think we definitely have a big group of Australian TV who love Mrs. Fisher's Mysteries. I think those were from a couple years ago. And then 800 Words. I don't know if that's really New Zealand, but either way, that's kind of growing here too. I don't know that one. Oh yeah, it's set in New Zealand, but it's about an Australian man or a New Zealand man who has lived most of his life in Australia who moves back to New Zealand. It's growing here.
in the States as we get international shows coming in.
I'll have to check that one out. That sounds good.
All right, so let's jump into this. So how many episodes of Dublin Murders have you seen? Have you just seen these first two?
I've only watched the first two. I haven't illegally downloaded the whole series, because that was illegal.
Good.
And I haven't actually got the first two either, because that would be illegal, because it's not showing here yet.
Oh.
I'm using my telepathic powers to tune into your wavelength so I know what's happening.
All right, well, let's get right to it. Of these characters, and you can go by just characters you like and or suspects, who intrigues you the most?
Well, I like Adam.
Yeah.
Adam comes up a lot, doesn't it? Adam was in Dark as well.
It's the name of the first man, and Adam was a troubled lad, and now he's become Rob, and now as things kind of get deeper into those woods, he's suddenly accidentally letting some of his Irish slip out. He was saying Jax instead of the Lou.
Yes, I'm waiting for him to let something slip like a bit more obvious than that, because I think it might at some stage.
Oh yeah.
I like Cassie too. I like them together. I think they're a good team together. I'm a bit worried that, from what I've heard, that they start working separate cases when the second book comes into it or something. The likeness. Right.
Well, we're going to have to see, because I haven't read that second book, and I'm kind of trying to see how it comes in. I think I see how it comes in, but we'll see.
Yeah. And I also like, is it O'Kelly or Kelly, the head cop?
Yeah, I just call him Officer Varys.
Yeah. I tell you what, it's an astounding performance to go from Varys to that policeman. I couldn't believe it was him. It's one end of the strand to the other. It's amazing.
It is really good. You couldn't imagine Varys saying the line, "Dick about, and I will shred your testicles."
Exactly. Yes. There's another one he said too, which I think I've got it written here. Oh yeah, here he goes. He was talking about the coroner.
Okay.
And he said he wouldn't give you the steam off his piss. Other times he'll give you the full bladder. And I think, I can't see Varys saying that sort of thing.
He should have just cut loose a couple of times and said those.
And who else do I like? I've got a soft spot for Quigley, for policeman, because first I thought he's just going to be a bit of a no-hoper, making up the numbers, but in the second episode, when he gets put back onto the case and he comes in and he does that little jig and says, "I'm back on the case," and thumbs up and then walks off, and I thought, actually, I don't mind him, he's quite good.
Yeah, I actually like that a lot.
And I've also got to mention Sandra Scully, the cleaner.
Oh, yeah.
Only for two reasons. One reason is there used to be a newsreader here called Sandra Sully.
Uh-oh.
And so at some stage, I'm going to say Sandra Sully instead of Sandra Scully. So I know it. It's just going to come out. So,
well, either could be guilty at this point.
Yes. And the other thing was, I was looking after I watched this episode, and obviously what she looks like on the episode. It's sort of like down and out, and not in a good way. Like life's been really hard on her and everything. And I went on to the cast pages, to the pictures of the cast, and she is actually very beautiful. So it's amazing what they can do with makeup and hair and clothes and her acting as well. So that was a complete surprise to me.
Well, let me say that all my online pictures, I'm in character like this character. And so, just...
Yeah, I do the right thing. I put someone else's picture on, so they don't have to look at me.
Oh, that's good. All right, so one final thing, because this is going to be a test. I was going to say Peter will be joining us in full in the coming weeks. Peter, this is, let's be honest, this is a bit of a whodunit in murder mysteries. Do you have any favorite murder mysteries, any favorite whodunits or cop procedurals like this that you're really drawn to?
Are you talking books or TV shows?
Both. I want to hear both.
Okay, well, TV shows, my favourite would probably be The Bridge, the original Swedish Denmark version, and Broadchurch, the original English version. What else? Then I tend to go for more... I really liked Hamish Macbeth, even though I'm not even sure if you can call it a police show. It's one of those little quaint English shows, they do so well with 12 episodes or something. But I really liked it. And Inspector Morse, I've always enjoyed him as well. Have you seen Inspector Morse?
I've seen it a couple of times. They have it here in America. What I love is pretty much every series you named, whether it was The Bridge, which here on some cable channels we got the original version, but then Americans remade it. And then we even got the British remake version of it. So we've kind of had all three versions of it on one channel or another. But I love that pretty much every show you named, I had seen. It makes the world smaller. It makes us feel like one part of the whole. So I love it.
Oh, good. So you actually saw the original Bridge?
Yes, but I didn't see it the whole way through. I ended up seeing the American version the whole way through, which I think is very, very similar. It has its own quirks because the bridge separates the United States and Mexico, so there's kind of political intrigue that way. But I'm pretty sure the whodunit in that case, it's pretty the same.
Series was the American one?
I think just two seasons, I believe.
Right. Well, the original was 4 seasons, and the main male actor. Well, I won't say what happens to him, but he is out after the second series. And I won't mention how he's out or why he's out, because it's a major plot thing. And then another male comes in. The same female is there for the whole series. And it's just as good. The third and fourth series are just as good as the first two.
All right, listen.
It's definitely worth checking out the rest of that if you can get onto it.
I'll try. Listeners, how can our listeners connect with you, Peter?
You can get me on Twitter at Bagga, BAGGA 2007.
All righty. Well, I will talk to you next week as our suspect list either keeps growing or gets shorter.
Double P podcast. Double P. What I like to call double P. What I like to call.
As I mentioned last week when I went over the great Irish saying, I will in me arse. This episode had some great Irish slang. Apparently something I'd never heard before. Hey, I gotta hit the jacks. In America, we call it the restroom, the WC, the toilet, the head. Apparently, they have WC, but also the loo over in England. But they've also got jacks, which sure enough just means a restroom. Or specifically, maybe the toilet. Irish listeners, you're going to have to let me know if that is what it is. If you ever had too much tea and had to run to the jacks, I feel sorry for you. So that is our Irish crack, our Irish slang for this week. If you've got some great Irish slang, let me know. I'm an American. My ancestry is Scottish and English. I went to Ireland one summer to visit my aunt there, and my cousin who has dual citizenship and was going to university there, not at Trinity College. I always forget the name of her college there in Ireland. But anyway, I need to learn more Irish things, so let me know. Once again, my name is Bubba. Please reach out to me. I've said it so many times at DoublePHQ on Twitter and Instagram, Facebook.com/DoublePHQ. Let me know that you're enjoying this. Let me know if I didn't have any suspects on the list who need to get on. Does Quigley, the cop down in the evidence locker, does that cop who's Phelan, seemingly man crush on our boy Adam Reilly. Is he too excited to get involved? Let us know. Please write to us. Let me know how you're feeling about this Irish crack.